Welcome to This Is Jen, your favorite podcast by a stand-up comic who is also a mom of 6 and a convert to Catholicism from lifelong atheism. I know that's what you've all been looking for in the podcast that you follow. So I'm proud to provide that service to you. You may have noticed This Is Jen podcast superfans. That we have not been doing the podcast every week, and that is because we are currently moving our studio. We have more space, we have a bigger room, but it's in flux. This is an under construction podcast episode today, and we are in a room that has a little more echo. We're working on it. This is all in flux. By the way, for those of you who watch on YouTube, this is, I think, the last week you'll see this with the green screen background. I need a real background. I need something organic. I need something that's not a green screen, and I'm tired of not ever being able to have anything green in the shot. You don't know how much that comes up until you have a green screen. For example, a moment ago I had a green pen, and I realized it's going to look like there's a floating hole. A floating hole in my podcast. We all like
that. We all love that.
And that's not my brand. Mm-hmm. Is floating
holes nowhere.
It's not. Welcome Shady Ray to the podcast. We got a very nice comment on iTunes about her. Now you guys know that iTunes reviews are my love language. My goal is to get to 1,000 reviews. And if you leave a review in the first 1,000, if I can ever do you a favor, I will. Sometimes it depends on the request, but it's very meaningful to me if you are a first 1,000 reviewer. And I want to read you a review we got a couple days ago to show to you that I personally read each one of these. And in fact, this is not hyperbole. I am not exaggerating when I tell you, I mean, I can't emphasize how much this is not a joke. This is, what I am about to say is a statement of fact. It is a more effective way to get in touch with me, to leave a review on iTunes, than it is to text me.
I don't even call you anymore.
Speaking of YouTube, so for those of you who can see on YouTube, I will now hold up my phone look, Shady, can you see how many unread texts there are? Yeah. Yeah, it's what is it? What's that number? Just 13. Shout it. No.
Oh, 101.
101.
13 was the phone calls.
Oh yeah, 13 missed calls. Yeah. 101 would be the number of unread texts I have. Ironically, it's like when people text me, a lot of times I freeze up because I want to say the perfect thing. Anyway, I don't mean any offense by not replying to my text. It's just a lot for me. But guess what my number of unread iTunes reviews is?
Zero.
It's 0. So seriously, if you're a personal friend of mine and I have not replied to your text, first of all, I'm sorry. I have trouble with correspondence. But second of all, try leaving a review on iTunes. So if you guys go to iTunes and you suddenly see a flood of reviews that are like, Jen, what did you think about brunch? Love the podcast, 5 stars, but we were looking at the 23rd for that. So is that still going to work? Just let me know, hit me up when you have a chance. And then I'll leave a review on their podcast to be like, yeah, I think the 23rd will work, but it would have to be after 11:30 I sleep late. So it is no joke, a better way to get in touch with me, to leave a review on iTunes. So I want to read you this review. This is so fantastic. She says, the way this gal found my podcast is she said, my cousin told me, hey, I was listening to this and it made me think of you. Now, if you know me, you know that I am one to put off doing things for as long as possible. This, however, was not the case. I found this episode and I found it so I could save it for later. And I immediately thought, now this is a woman after my own heart. She gets it. This was my episode, How to Be Creative When You Feel Like Trash. She said that this reviewer says, feeling like trash is my constant state of being, so I knew I'd need to listen to this soon. The very next day, I played that episode, then another, and like 5 more for good measure. And let me tell you, I have been obsessively listening to as many episodes as I can ever since. My mom thinks I have a problem. That's a good goal.
It's a good problem.
Yeah. That's a good goal. That if her mom thinks that she has a problem, like I want people to be so into this podcast.
You want to worry everyone's
that
mom.
Mom's concerned. Yeah. So I think I have found the solution to all of my woes. That is what this podcast promises. It is a solution to all your woes. Not only is she hilarious, but she's a devout Catholic. I'm Catholic. That's why I always tell you guys I was raised atheist, so that you will grade me on the curve.
We're working on it.
I do not present in a traditional Catholic way. But I'm trying, and I love Catholicism. I love being Catholic. Whole family converted. Okay. Plus, and this is the part we love. Plus, Shady Ray, the in-studio producer, is an absolute treasure who is always there with a hilarious comment or with a few lines of scat. And she did clarify scat, the music.
Yeah.
And then she says, as a side note, they are both really pretty. Shady, this is what I'm looking for in iTunes. Like, if I were one of those podcasters who made $100,000 an episode, and by the way, they are out there, I'd buy this person a car.
Seriously.
I would just be like, what do you want? Like, do you want an SUV? Like, what are we looking at? Like, because I just really appreciate this. And she's not done. A few final things.
What?
Jen Fulweiler, in addition to this masterpiece of a podcast, take that, haters. My haters have been, evidently, they've got their strength back. They got the vaccine. Like, they're coming back. Take that, haters. She calls this a masterpiece of a podcast. Has a comedy special. Now she plugs my comedy special. She ends by saying, anyway, I highly recommend this podcast and sincerely invite you to join the army of Jen Fulweiler stans who have been absolutely blessed by this wonderful woman and her work. And I'm trying to get this woman's name. That's what I'm searching for right now so that I can thank her by name.
Personally.
I do wonder if Joe wrote that, like I was having a bad date. Maybe he was like, she's having a hard time. I'm looking up. See, I have a little service that sends me all new reviews. That, of course, Well, I'm sorry that I can't thank you by name because, of course, change it to charitable. Chartable. Okay. Here we go. I will now have her name. Megan Michelle White. Megan Michelle White. Thank you very much.
We love you.
We appreciate it. And again, for any of you who know me personally, I haven't returned your texts. I haven't returned your calls. Just leave a review on iTunes.
Be like Michelle.
Be like Michelle, and I will see it. Okay.
Megan Michelle.
So today's topic is I want to update you on my health and how I almost died from getting a B12 shot. It was fine. I just lost control of all my muscles. I wouldn't, that's not too. I just couldn't get out of bed and was slurring my speech. Hallie Lord thought that I was drunk. She actually was like, no judgment. This is a safe space. It was 11 a.m. She was like, this is a safe space. But have you been like drinking heavily here at 11 a.m.? And I hadn't. It was a reaction to the B12 shot. So we will talk about that and about being awesome when you're tired. Two things. First, I also want to go through, I had a sketch that I thought was fun. I thought that we were all just having a bit of fun, but Joe vetoed it. And I accept vetoes from my team. Like if Shady or Hallie or Joe Chappell, if one of them is like, this is not going to come across like you think, I usually listen to that. And it tells you how insane they are. If you've seen the stuff that I post, like it tells you how crazy they are. That like the Catholic LGBT sketch and all that. They were like, yeah, I think that's good. I think that's worth posting. So it's their fault when I post stuff that's over the line. So we will go into that. But first, I have been thinking about doing this podcast live. I think that would be fun to just do this live, and then I can get comments in real time. So that is another thing. So to follow up on, we will be off next week as well as we continue to do the studio. I am doing an offsite with Hallie Lord in Charleston, South Carolina, where we seriously we get sticky notes, or not sticky, so Post-it makes sticky papers they're poster size, but they're like sticky notes. We cover them with the hotel room. I get a little cheap sweet thing. Like they're real, I don't know whether it's COVID or what, but they're really inexpensive. It's like $99 a night for a very decent suite, like where you have a living room. We rearrange the furniture to make it all meeting set up. I cover the walls with these sticky poster things. They don't hurt the walls, and then you can, I mean, it's like, you know, the shots of conspiracy theorist people where they have their walls covered with stuff. So Hallie and I do that, and we talk about our, you know, personal and professional dreams and our mission, and it's amazing. It's so much fun. So we're doing that next week, and I'm trying to get the studio together. So no podcast next week, but it's going to be kind of a relaunch after that. And when I floated the idea of in the future doing the podcast live, Shady said that's a dope idea.
It is.
And I really like that adjective. It's not one that I have access to. You know, it just wouldn't be appropriate for me to say things are dope, but Shady absolutely can.
Yeah, it's dope.
And if she thinks it's dope, it's one of my personal metrics is, you know, when I evaluate my KPIs at the end of the week. So KPI, it's a key performance indicator. And one of my KPIs is how many dope things did I do this week?
Yeah, exactly.
And I do feel like that's my guiding mission. So in order to keep with my mission of maxing out on the number of dope things I do this week, if I can figure out how, because I think I'd want to broadcast it on, I don't think you guys don't understand how complicated my job is. This is the last thing I'll say on this because I realize nobody cares. But I just want to show you, this podcast thing is harder than it seems. Instagram is my main platform, so I'd like to go live on Instagram. But Shady's looking at me like I'm making up my own problems again.
No.
Look, I am the master of making up my own problems. This is true. But this is a real problem. YouTube is filmed in a horizontal format. Instagram is vertical. And so I don't see how I can go live. It'll be like just my shoulder.
2 cameras.
And half a boob, you know? Like if I try... Oh, 2 cameras. Shady. That's an interesting thought.
2 cameras.
Okay, well, good that we're having this business meeting here on the podcast. You guys, let me know what you think. But really, the only way to get in touch with me that I'll see, there are 2, I mean, I'm not kidding. Even if you know me personally, there are 2 ways to get in touch with me that I will see. Join my Patreon and send me a DM. I do read all of those DMs, and I read all the comments. I can't always reply, but I do read all the comments. So Patreon is a very good way to get in touch with me. Patreon.com/.
Try to be as dope as possible.
And I mean for like my personal friends, like even if they don't want my content, I'm just saying if I haven't replied to your text, have you considered joining the Patreon? I mean, it might be like Mom, you know, I know Mom that you were like, why didn't you reply to my text? But if you would message me on Patreon, then, you know, I might be able to get back to you. So that is one way. The second way is leaving an iTunes review. So, and I'm not good at keeping up with any other correspondence. I tell you what, you can email Chapel. That email address is fullweiler.mhw, long story as to why that's the address, @gmail.com. You know how all the podcasters who don't suck at life, they, you know, it'll be like, or it'll be like, Jane@superpodcast.com.
Yeah.
And I'm like, fullweiler.mhw@gmail. I mean, what is... God, okay.
I like it.
Is it dope?
I like it.
Is it dope?
Dope enough.
Yeah, I have like an underground podcast. You know, this isn't like a, you know, fancy...
Only the cool kids.
Yeah, I'm underground. I'm like one of those, you know, it's like instead of... They're the Starbucks of podcasters, and I'm like the underground rave. You know, that you have to know someone, you have to like meet someone. Okay. So this podcast might be initially recorded live in the future, which would change nothing because I have a live talk radio background. I do this thing as live anyway. Okay, so we did the iTunes reviews. We covered that. The dope idea. Good. And I've established that I will be off next week. Before I get into the health update, let me play the forbidden sketch for you. I thought this was fun. I thought we were all having a bit of fun. And Shady, I'm just going to show it to you. We're going to add it in post, so you don't need to control that there. Oh, okay. Okay, so this was, let me set it up. The rapper DMX passed away this week. I have always been a big fan of his, and his story is, he has a just fascinating but very sad story. He came from very serious just abuse and like horrible, oh gosh, the stuff that this guy went through. I won't even, you know what, I was going to give you an example, but honestly it's too depressing. Like what this guy overcame, and like he tried to shine light into the world, and before his performances he would say these really awesome prayers about how no matter what you've gone through, God's got you. And this was a guy who, like, he's been through a lot. So if he's saying that no matter what you've gone through, God's got you, I mean, that means something. And then of course Prince Philip died this week. God rest both of their souls. So Shady, here was the sketch I thought would be fun, but was vetoed.
The world lost 2 public figures this week. One was involved in an organization that had a long-standing reputation for thuggery, bullying, stealing, and covering the crimes of its own members. The other was rapper DMX.
I thought that
May they both rest in peace.
I think that is funny.
So I said,
I think that's very
I
funny.
thought it was fun. I said I guess you guys, since this is added in post, I'll repeat it in case anyone missed it. I said 2 people died this week, and there's a picture of DMX and Prince Philip. So it's DMX and then Prince Philip next to him, and Prince Philip looking very regal. And I said, and everyone knows that DMX, his crew is the Rough Riders, kind of motorcycle. And look, the man was imperfect. He was involved in a fair amount of crime and whatnot. But so I said, the world lost 2 public figures. One was involved in an organization known for thuggery, stealing, what was it? Covering up the crimes of its own members, something else. And the other was rapper DMX. Little bit.
I think it's funny.
I thought it was fun.
I don't see why that got vetoed, honestly.
I don't either.
We need to reevaluate.
I know. And yeah, I'll post it maybe like next week when it's like totally irrelevant. I'll be like, you guys remember that?
Joe's
remember
asleep.
that? Like, hey, we as Catholics, we honor the dead, forever. Like I'm Catholic, so I'm not going to forget these guys just because they died a couple weeks ago. So that got vetoed. And now what Joe said is, it could come across like I was making fun of the dead, which I was making fun of the royal family, not Prince.
As we should.
Yeah, okay. So that was the second thing. He was like, it could also seem anti-royal. And I was like, but isn't that the fun of being an American?
I was gonna say, like, aren't we?
To be thank you.
Aren't we?
Aren't we? Why did we fight that war? If we, let's just go back to be part of England. If we're not a little anti-royal, you know what? Fine. You guys tell me what to do. Take all my money and taxes. Well, we're actually headed that direction. We actually got that box covered here in this country now. But I thought it was a little fun to be anti-royal. And, they have Prince Andrew, who is the son of Queen Elizabeth and Prince Philip. So Prince Andrew, super close friends with Jeffrey Epstein, has been credibly accused of sex with minors. And they've done nothing about it. He promised that he would help New York authorities. Like, these girls who were trafficked and who were victims and who were sold as pieces of meat to pervy old men, they are trying to heal and they are trying to seek justice. And Prince Andrew, who was part of this, allegedly, but very credible accusations, said he would help, has done nothing. And meanwhile, the royal family, they're investigating, was Meghan Markle rude to staff? And it's like, look, do you think that maybe there's a higher priority of what you guys want to deal with? So, I mean, it's not that I personally hate the Queen or anything, but they've made some really big mistakes. And we're American, and that's fun.
Yes.
To poke fun at the royal family. It's fun. But Joe was like, it'll seem like you're making fun of the dead. Here's the other thing. Shady, if I ever become a queen, she has a look of trepidation on her face. If I ever become a queen, this is part of the royal deal, is you accept when you are a royal that your name, your public presence is kind of a symbol. And so people, they are going to poke fun at you in the way, they're going to dehumanize you a little bit, which isn't great, but it's also part of the deal when you're royal. You are kind of a symbol to people. It's kind of like being Pope. I mean, and that, popes accept that too, that's why they changed their name. Like it's a whole, I am a symbol to people to some extent. And so people poke fun at you, and I don't think the royals care. And I want to tell you, Shady, that if I become a queen and people make jokes about the organization that I was part of after my death. If they even make jokes about me after my death, fine. You know what? I don't care if I'm not a queen. I mean, we're all just having fun. So that was the forbidden sketch. I just thought it would be a joy to do. And also anyone who's followed me for any length of time knows that truly and sincerely, I love hip hop. I mean, I truly respect the genre. Another thing that is not exaggeration. I find a lot of it to be Shakespearean. Shakespeare was very big on wordplay, on combining words in interesting ways so that the sum is greater. The sum is greater than its parts. And you see a lot of that in hip hop, especially the kind of undiscovered artists. So I have a sincere, like, this is not me doing this for shtick. I'm a DMX fan. Like, genuinely, I care about and love the genre of hip hop. So such a joke, I thought, would be authentic to
Very
me.
authentic.
Anyway, so God rest the soul of DMX and Prince Philip. And I'm sorry that I wasn't able to have a little fun.
I had fun watching.
Yeah,
it.
and that could be another sketch. I have, some of my sketches recently lost hundreds upon hundreds of followers for. So we have learned that not everyone shares my humor on all things. And I have another one. You know what's weird is I have another one. You know what? I think I'll tell you guys what it is on the podcast. Maybe next episode. It is, if I have one follower left after I do this sketch, which was oddly enough not vetoed by anyone, I will wonder why. I will sincerely be curious if anyone is still following me after I post this sketch. But it's going to be fire. It's going to be. I'll tell you guys what it is on the next episode. So, health update. Okay, so I think I mentioned, Shady, did I mention so we've been doing these episodes every other week while we redo the studio. Did I mention that I was diagnosed with serious vitamin D deficiency and B12? I said it on,
but I'm not sure if you said it on the podcast.
Okay, so I was, and one of the things that's interesting about this is that you guys know that I've talked before about my history with chronic pain, and I went into this on Patreon as well, of learning about Dr. Sarno and how that can connect to the way you feel. And I had some very serious medical symptoms that it turns out it was like that Sarno style pain, that it had a root in unresolved emotional issues. And the important thing to understand when you talk about this is it's not at all to say it is all in your head. It is very real pain. This is very real physical stuff that is going on. But the initial mechanism that gets the ball rolling is stress. Actually, not classic stress, like gotta pay those bills kind of stress, but stress like unresolved issues, basically. So I've talked about that. So when I was having issues come up, I was wondering, like, well, is this one of those, is this unresolved issue? Is this like unresolved stress sort of issues, or is this legitimate? And then when I started having these muscle twitches, Shady, that like weren't stopping. Like it was really bad. Like it was like 24/7. My muscles just twitched, like just constantly. And as usual, I'm trying to look up which episode on Patreon this was, and I don't know why. I think it's episode 17. Episode 17 on Patreon is where I went into the whole background of how I discovered that some very, very serious pain stuff I was going through had this root in this Sarno type of issues. So I was wondering, when I had these symptoms, is this, how do you know when something is a legitimate issue and something has more of those unresolved issue roots? Well, in this case, it was just 24/7, and it did not stop, and it was getting worse. And so it turns out I have very low vitamin D levels. Who could have guessed? Being the bronze. I mean, anyone watching on YouTube is like, what, that woman,
tall, dark, and handsome.
Yeah, exactly. She looks like she spends all her time in the sun. And my vitamin B12 levels were low. Now, friends, lots of people get vitamin B12 shots. I want to emphasize this.
Yeah, my grandma does.
I'm not the only one. And look, they do it at these Medi Spa places. And this place where I get my hair blown out, There's a Medi Spa next door. People go in there for, Botox, fillers, and all that, which I'm not opposed to. I tried fillers once, and that was a couple years ago. They're no longer active, because I didn't know that like, you have to keep getting them done. I'm like, what, am I made of money? I'm gonna go shake the money. I thought this was a one and done thing. Are you guys kidding me? But I've never done Botox or anything. Not opposed to it. I just haven't done it. But there's a Medi Spa. So all these women are going in there for Botox, but I saw that they do vitamin B12 shots. And I'm like, I'd like to take a clinic that's based on how you look and have them inject things into my body.
Yeah.
I think that that's a good idea.
Yeah.
And so I did do my homework, and I knew there are different types of injections you can get. And I asked them which type it was. And anyway, so I got the B12 shot. And right afterwards, I got very, very red. My face was really flushed. And then the next day, that's when I didn't have so much control over my muscles.
I'm laughing at you.
I know, and Shady's laughing. Well, it is funny. No, it is. You guys can laugh at me. I cause all my own problems. I mean, literally 98% of my problems were either caused by me or are in my head. I mean, it's ridiculous. So I got this. Shot and couldn't move so well. I mean, I could move, but it was like I got up and I went downstairs, and it was seriously like I had just done the Iron Man. I mean, when I just got back in bed. So then I called Hallie, and the first thing she said, "What's wrong?" And I said, "Wait, how do you know something's wrong?" And she said, "Well, you're about to cry. You sound like you're about to cry." And I said, I'm not. I can't move, but other than that, I'm doing great. I'm living my best life.
I'm immobile, but
right, yeah. Other than that, and so then that's when she was like, safe space, no judgment. Have you been drinking? Because so I was kind of talking like this.
Oh no.
I was serious. I was talking like this. So she was like, I think you need to go to the ER. Which I didn't because I'm obstinate. But so I Googled instead. Here is what I believe happened. And this is what people want from a podcast, I think, is the details of my medical history. Yeah, the next episode, tune into the scintillating next episode where we'll look at my labs. So maybe I can get a split screen. So here's what my cholesterol is, and what do you guys think? So here's my theory about what happened. I was very deficient in B12, and I was originally diagnosed with this in 2019, and the symptoms had been going on for a while. So I think that what happened was I had been deficient for like years, and I finally get this huge injection, and it's like a lot when you get injected with the B12. I'll make this short, I promise. When you are low on B12, your cells kind of stop dividing, and they get sort of enlarged. And then if you were to suddenly get a big injection of B12, they kind of kick back into gear. They start doing their cellular thing again. But that requires other nutrients, particularly potassium. So I looked at my labs. I was also very low on potassium. My theory is that getting that massive B12 injection after years of serious deficiency triggered, because I was also low on potassium, triggered a potassium deficiency. Because I looked up, like, for example, I could not quench my thirst that morning. Like, I kept drinking and drinking and drinking. I couldn't quench my thirst. Anyway, don't worry, guys. I'm talking to my doctor about it. It's fine, and I am now fine. But suffice
your doctor is me dressed up like a doctor.
Right. My doctor is a sock puppet. He's like, Jen, I think it's fine. Come back. Just get back on Instagram. You're fine. Yeah, that is my, like I'll draw a little face. Look, here, look, let's bring my doctor on the show. Those of you on YouTube can see my doctor is excited. Hey, Jen, I think you're fine. I wouldn't even worry about it. And I wish that Shady were kidding.
You are just drunk. Jen, you are drunk.
A little, right, yeah. Don't lie, Jen. What about the 3 shots of vodka? And always closer to the truth than we wish it were. So the point is, I've spent plenty of time out of my life feeling awful, tired, and whether it's that Sarno TMS kind of pain. I mean, I have been. Let me tell you this. I have been diagnosed in my lifetime with fibromyalgia, chronic fatigue. That was from a chiropractor I didn't really know very well, but they were like, you have all the symptoms. Fibromyalgia, chronic fatigue, interstitial cystitis. What else? It's just a lot. And then there was another one that was related to chronic pain. And then I also have my blood clotting disorder, pulmonary embolisms, almost died. I really it is a wonder that I did not die in 2013. Both lungs were full of blood clots, and some of them were so large, on the CT scan, anyone could be like, oh, that's a blood clot. It was really bad. Deep vein thrombosis. So I'm just establishing my street cred here. And I had 6 babies in 8 years. I get severe morning sickness. I know what it is like to not just feel terrible, but to feel terrible for prolonged periods of time. When I had the pulmonary embolism, because I was pregnant at the time, they couldn't really resolve it quickly. And so I spent a couple of months not ever being able to get a full breath of air. I would breathe. It's like a mini asthma. I would breathe, but I was not getting the full breath of air. And I just lived like that. That was my life. So what this makes me think of is Tiffany Jenkins. She's a comic. She's very talented. Yeah, hilarious. Isn't she great? So she said, I don't know if you saw her post from today. She says, so she posts a picture of herself. She's in bed looking tired. And she says, I have a dead serious question for those of you who aren't tired all the time. And by the way, her handle on Instagram is Juggling the Jenkins. For those of you who are not tired all the time, how? I'm not even trying to be funny. I am never not tired, ever, unless it's bedtime. Every single morning I wake up and I can't wait to go back to bed. I have no drive, no strength, no energy. I've tried energy drinks, no energy drinks. I've tried eating healthy, exercising, tons of water and supplements. I've tried Thrive, ketones, Happy Coffee, and other products from my friends. I've tried not napping and going to bed early, and eventually I'm right back to daytime exhaustion. I want to know what your day looks like, how you feel throughout the day, what you do, blah, blah, blah. Are you on a schedule? She says, and this is, listen to this, Shady. She says, I'm just so lost. And I wonder if it will ever be possible for me to feel energized during the day. So I cannot emphasize to you how much I know how she feels and have been there. And so here's what has worked for me. And some of these statements will be controversial. Here's the non-controversial part. Obviously, I'm sure, well, I already see in her comments, everyone's telling her to have her levels checked because it could be thyroid, vitamin D, B12. Hey, I know what you could do. Why don't you go to a medi spa and just have them inject you with things to resolve this? And if you don't die, it might work out okay. So everyone, keep coming to me for your medical advice. But here's what I have found. So according to my labs, I have been living in a vitamin D deficiency because I got some labs a long time ago that I didn't deal with. Don't judge me. I've been busy. I have been in a state of deficiency for over 5 years, and it's a serious deficiency of vitamin D. So much so that my body was twitching uncontrollably, and now that I'm on 50,000 units weekly, I've got the prescription. You turn into the sun when you take these prescriptions.
My eyes.
And it's resolved. So there was definitely an issue, but I will tell you, with a vitamin D severe deficiency that was just getting worse over time, after having 6 babies in 8 years, severe vitamin B12 deficiency, and surprise, surprise, potassium deficiency that wasn't as bad, but I think might have gotten really bad. During these years of this deficiency, I did have symptoms and some fatigue, but I have felt better than I did when I was 15 years younger, than I was 20 years younger. And there were 2 things that really helped me. One is getting my food situation in order and not listening to other people who are not me and have bad advice. If you are someone with a sensitive constitution, like evidently I am, you cannot listen to the average person, because I would listen to all of these people who are like, I have to have a protein snack 10 times a day, and that's what you need to do. And notice, this is increasingly becoming a pet peeve. When someone finds something that works for them, and then they very aggressively put it on you, that this has to be what works for you. So I would do that, and I don't know what it is, but I do not deal with like kind of protein, like the real, like I was meant to just eat wheat thins all the time. Like I don't deal with those like meats and things like that. My body does not process it very well. It makes me absolutely just crash and be exhausted. And that whole thing of snacking all day long, I cannot emphasize how terrible it made me feel. And finally I realized, like, I think my body is telling me I am eating way more food than I need to. And I made the mistake of one time saying this on my blog, on the internet. People told me I was anorexic and I have, blah, blah, blah. But I realized, like, when I really just get still and listen to my body, and I did some food journaling, and I was like, when I feel best, it's when I just don't eat that much, which is hard for me because I have addictive eating tendencies. Like once I start, there's no stopping. Like, I mean, I am just job in the hut, like, blah, 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 blah. So I'm not one of those people who's like, oh, I'll just one bite for me, like leaving food on my plate. No, at restaurants, I am stopping just short of actually licking the plate. I'm not a person who leaves food on my plate. So this doesn't come naturally to me. But long story short, what worked for me was intermittent fasting, so that throughout a lot of the day, I'm just not eating. And when I started doing this, my body was like, thank God you finally found it. And I cannot tell you what it did for my energy levels. Now, on the other hand, I know I was just seeing someone's Instagram stories where she was saying, for her, like, she eats these high protein meals all day long. She got super involved in her gym. She's now a CrossFit instructor. She's like just killing it, like, that throwing boulders around like they do at well, I'm imagining that. I don't know that she actually does that, but that I just think that's what they do. Like, you take up a big man and you throw him through a wall, and then you get a boulder and you roll it.
Get a hammer and smack something.
Yeah. And then she eats like 5 times a day. She'll just like, rip off a cow's leg and start eating it. I don't, she's like the paleo, and then she'll have some bulletproof coffee and put butter in it. And that is working really well for her. She has never felt better. She just feels amazing. And the lesson there is, if you just constantly feel bad, and you've constantly felt bad for a long time, it might be the case that you have to do something kind of extreme. Like that woman I follow on Instagram, in order to feel good, she had to go throw boulders every day at a CrossFit gym and eat piles of meat, most of it raw, like every day. And now she feels amazing. For me, I had to go the exact opposite. Like, I just don't eat that much because of
broth.
Now, right. Yeah. I don't eat that much, and not because I'm a natural, like, I eat like a bird person, but just through my intermittent fasting practice, when I limit what I eat, I cannot tell you how good I feel. So the point is not to necessarily do exactly what I do, but watch your food intake and accept you might need to do something kind of extreme. Like some people say going on a vegan diet. I always assume they're kind of making that up, but some people rave about it. The point is, if you've never felt good, you might have to do something extreme with food. Here's where I get to the controversial part. And I did not check the SD card before we started recording this, so I have 10 minutes to convey. I can't go on about this I have 14. And now, luckily, I did live radio, so I can probably get this to the minute of when this SD card is about to run out. Here's the somewhat controversial part. If you have ever listened to me on anything, please take my word for it, that your mental state, particularly the things that you don't give yourself permission to acknowledge, your feelings that are in your mind, like, they're not okay. Like, it's not okay to have that opinion. The opinion's there, the emotion is there. I'm feeling it, but I don't want to go there, because that is not an okay thing to think. Good people, good Christians don't think that way. Good women don't think that way. Good men don't, that kind of stuff that you bottle up, and you're like, or like, memories, like anger from things like that. It can and does have a physical impact, especially of people with certain personality types. My husband not being one of them. If my husband is in pain, it's just a real legitimate pain. He does not have the kind of personality type that tends to have emotional blocks manifest physically. I do all the time. And what I have found is every single year that goes on in my life, I am more convinced of the power of this inner emotional stuff to manifest physically and to have a physical impact. So this is what I would say to Tiffany Jenkins. And I thought about DMing her, but I have a feeling she has like 10,000 DMs right now. This is what I would say to Tiffany Jenkins or to anyone who is like, you're always tired and you always feel bad. Get your labs checked. And then if that doesn't come back with anything concerning, explore ways of having a different relationship to food. Maybe it's paleo, maybe it's vegan, maybe it's intermittent fasting. Just accept that you might have to do something that is way different than anyone you know. And you'll know when you find it. I would expand more on that, but we're running out of SD card space.
We're just like,
when we relaunch this podcast, we'll have a much better system. You'll know when you find it. Take my word for that. And then go to Amazon. If you have ever been diagnosed with anything where the doctors were like, we believe you that you feel terrible, but like that we're not finding like a physical cause for this, or if there is a physical cause, it's not normally this bad. Like this seems worse. That it's like you had an old injury, and there is an injury there, but like normally it's not this extreme. Type the word Sarno, Sarno, into Amazon. See what books come up. If you're not a reader, get an audio, but just choose one that resonates with you. Because even when it is not like an acute, straight up illness, a lot of times when I just feel tired, like I just can't wake up, like I just can't check into the day. Fully 9 times out of 10. For me, now that my eating stuff is, I've found a system of eating that works for me. Like now that we take that off the table, fully 9 times out of 10, now it's a mental thing. It's the way I'm thinking. It's emotional blocks. It's, just like blocked emotions. I don't know how else to say it. I talk about this all the time on Patreon. I go into details with it, but that's what I would say to Tiffany Jenkins and to you. If you feel that like you're just constantly tired, and you don't know why. Now, if you have when I had 3 kids under age 3, no mystery as to why I was tired all the time. But if it's like, I don't know, my youngest kid is 8 and like I just shouldn't, I don't see any external reason that I should be this tired. I beg you to be open to the fact that there could be some sort of thought pattern, some sort of emotional thing that's at the root. And again, I emphasize, it doesn't mean it's like it's all in your head and you need to toughen up or this isn't valid. Or it's totally valid. Some of the worst pain I've ever been in my life is this sort of pain, and it's absolutely valid. But just explore the fact that there could be an emotional connection there. And then the nice thing is, when you deal with this kind of thing, whether it's through journaling, there's this woman, Nicole Sachs, I think, Sachs. She has some interesting things to say about this. Sachs. Even like, I recommend therapy, but even if you don't currently have a therapist, like through journaling, you will end up even if it turns out your whatever physical thing you're going through doesn't have a mental connection. Like, oh, it was just, you had you got a random shot that you had a bad reaction to from a Medi Spa. I don't know, these things that happen in life. You will end up in such a more mentally strong place. And again, the data point that I give is being 15 years older and having a massive deficiency that went on for years and was just getting worse over time. I felt better than when physically, technically, like on paper, I was in much better shape and had no deficiencies or whatever 15 years ago. And that was the mental component. So that is those are my thoughts for if you are always tired. And I guess here's the final thing I'll say on that with the 8 minutes left I have on this SD card. I also want to offer you hope. I I have felt better than I did 5 years ago, 10 years ago. I feel better today than I did 20 years ago. Like by a lot. Like on a scale of 1 to 10, on the average day 20 years ago, let's say I felt like a 5 or 6 on a scale of 1 to 10. Now, today, when I'm not having randos inject me with questionable substances, on the average day, I feel a 7, 8, sometimes 10. And so I want to give you hope that even if it's been years, even if it's been decades of you just never feel well, doctors can't find anything, you don't know what's going on, I want to encourage you not to give up. Because like when I look back, I actually remember the moment. It was 2017, and it was summer of 2017. And I remember very clearly having the thought, maybe it's time to roll it up. You know, like maybe it's time for me to give up on life, basically. I felt so bad for so long. I hate the way I look. I hate the way I feel. And maybe it's time to just, you know, do the bare minimum each day, not try to contribute to the world, not try to be my best for my family, and just give up on life. And it really felt in that moment like, yeah, that's probably what I'm going to do. And yeah, it's probably the best path. Because I mean, let's face it, I've been trying to feel better for way over a decade, closer to 2 decades now, and I haven't made any progress. And so maybe it's time to wrap up here. And I really would have never seen it coming, that everything was about to change, and that things turned around, and that I would feel better than I ever dreamed I could feel. Which is actually not the case today, because I'm still recovering from the B12 thing. But in general, I didn't dream that I could feel the way I feel now. So that is my final word of encouragement to you. Whether, let's say none of my advice works. It's not a Sarno thing. It's not a food thing. But you find some totally different, you find a third solution that I haven't even thought of. My final message to you is don't give up, because there absolutely is hope. And as the SD card is wrapping up this episode here, good thing I've done live media. I know how to count it down. We will end here. Thank you very much to Hallie Lord, who is doing offsite production. Again, I am about to head to Charleston to do one of our little offsites where we will cover an entire hotel room, living room with our vision boards, and we'll dream big and make plans and have a lot of fun. I can't wait for that. Follow Hallie on Instagram, Hallie Lord, Hallie Lord. Her new book is Falling Home, and you should get it. It's fantastic. It has so many great insights. It's this beautifully written memoir. Shady Ray, her Instagram handle is a little harder
weird,
to
yeah.
remember, but it will be up on the screen if you search for Shady Ray. I don't know, probably.
I
would
only
imagine.
Shady Ray.
I would imagine it would. And get ready. We're off next week, but when I come back, we're going to have a really cool. It's going to be cool, right? We were talking about
Yeah, it is.
it's going to, yeah, we're going to have a really cool time. So we will be back soon, and on the next fabulous edition of the podcast. This is Jen.